In the 2009 Avatar, Jake Sully is sent to Pandora to infiltrate the Na'vi and gather intelligence for the humans, but he soon becomes sympathetic to the tribe and their way of life. As the conflict between man and alien race intensifies, Jake must determine where his loyalty lies. He ultimately decides to join the Na'vi in their fight against the humans, leading to a final showdown between the two sides. Now, Colonel Miles is the main source of tension in both films. On one hand, this gives the returning audience a sense of familiarity. On the other hand, it creates the impression of viewing the same movie over again. Why is that? Miles' mission in the first movie was to defeat the Na'vi and secure the resources of Pandora for the mining company, no matter what the cost. And the biggest threat standing in his way was Jake Sully. The second movie is a direct continuation of the first, but this time, nothing notable has changed. Miles is still tasked to take out Jake Sully because he's the biggest threat standing in the way of gathering valuable resources in Pandora. His actions towards Jake is still what drives all the events. As a result, Jake's motivation stays the same in both movies, which is to protect his people. This is usually not a big problem, but the narrative blueprint for this film is too similar to the first. And this to me is not a positive. It feels like the creators opted to take the safe path, going for something they knew worked 13 years ago and not using that time to innovate on the storytelling as much as they did for the visual effects. However, the story of Way of the Water does have a lot of good things to offer. The focus shifts from Jake's progress as the tribe's protector in the first film to his family in the second one, their bond, connections, and struggles. What the second one does better than the first is concentrate on the family's difficulties and individual experiences. Everything feels more intimate and human, if you will. The focus is no longer on protecting the nameless members of an extraterrestrial race, but on Jake's loved ones, personalities we get to experience throughout the movie. Everything is tighter and condensed. Even the antagonist feels more focused on, with the introduction of the dynamic between Miles and his son, Spider. Throughout The Way of the Water, there are a few parts that appear forced and break the flow of the narrative. The first one is when Miles gets the upper hand in the hostage exchange, but releases Jake's youngest daughter in exchange for Spider. The idea behind the scenario is that the new Colonel Miles, or Avatar Miles, feels affection for his son due to the memories of older Miles, even though they aren't technically blood related. The idea is understood, but it still feels out of place. The bond between Spider and Avatar Miles is undercooked. Sure, they share a character building moment, but in that moment there isn't enough development to justify Miles' actions. It goes against his militaristic, ruthless, and relentless nature, something we have witnessed over 2 whole films. The movie reminds everyone that Avatar Miles and Old Miles are not one and the same, but it's barely noticeable anyways. He's just as hard and persistent as the Old Miles. His fondness for Spider is hinted at, but never fully explored. The hostage exchange would have been completely plausible if there had been an earlier scene in which Spider was in danger, and Avatar Miles rescued him, for example. It is jarring when he fails to finish the job towards the end of the movie. They could have dedicated some of the screen time to really fleshing out this father-son dynamic instead of spending it so much on Jake's kids. Let's talk about the obvious we saw it coming moment, where the whale dolphin, we'll call it, saves the kid from the shark attack. I don't really have to explain what it is. It's a forced plot moment where the writing needs to stretch itself to give a character plot armor. Well, had the whale dolphin tribe been introduced before that scene, it wouldn't feel out of place that the rogue whale dolphin saved the boy. There would have been more context and build-up. We finally talk about the visuals. The visual effects in the 2009 Avatar was highly praised and considered some of the best in film history. Well, at that time. The CGI created environments and landscape of Pandora were breathtaking, with luscious forests, towering mountains, and otherworldly flora and fauna. The 3D effects in the film were also very well done, adding depth and immersion to the experience. It simply was way ahead of its time. Technology aside, one of the reasons the first Avatar felt revolutionary was because of fewer comparisons and references available for outstanding CGI at the time. The first Avatar was truly one of a kind. But as the technology behind motion capture became more streamlined, it became easier to incorporate in more and more movies. Consequently, many studios had time to explore developing special effects to bring fantasy universes like the MCU to life. I mean, consider the visuals of Infinity War and Endgame. Yes, The Way of the Water is undoubtedly visually more impressive than the first movie. But it doesn't feel revolutionary. Why? Because we have had time to experience other movies with absolutely amazing CGI. I mean, look at this footage which has been entirely rendered in Unreal Engine 5. It's insane. Now, that being said, my judgment of the movie is purely based on the writing and the characters in comparison to the first one, and does not consider the visuals at all. So, for The Way of the Water, yes, the personal moments throughout the story feel more impactful, but there are also moments, as mentioned before, that reduce the experience at the same time a little bit. Plus, nothing can top the pure badass of this scene right here. In conclusion, I rate both the movies the exact same.